But we started talking about this because we were talking about the coverage that that Griner was getting for being released, and only until I did not know until you told me about what's his name, who's still the one still in
Big
the
B.
cell,
Marine guy,
the Marine, and his flash drive in his pocket.
Yeah,
and his documents,
and showing up at the Russian border with $80,000 in his, because we all do that.
And how kind of the apples and oranges comparison between the two was, why there had to be a little more discussion in Washington.
Well, the thing that killed me was there was this backlash of. I just said, and I didn't say anything besides there's no information on a Paul Whelan guy. So the only thing, I said, fuck it, let me just look up on Wikipedia. So I go on Wikipedia. Like one of the first things I see is that he has filled out like basically a resume, and it goes back and he says that he worked for a police department. I want to think it might be Clarkson, Michigan, and like a sheriff's, like Shelby County Sheriff's in Michigan. The police department said he did work for them, but not in any kind of a patrol role. It was something very, and the sheriff's department has no knowledge, recollection, or records of him ever working. So then I find out that he has 4 different passports to 4 different countries. Okay, and you've got stacks of the currency next to it. What is this, fucking Matt Bourne?
So, all right, so important.
It's actually Jason Bourne, but I wanted to say Matt.
Important to the story, all of this, right?
Yeah.
So I hear it from you. It was in the Saturday or Sunday Times, not as the headline though, but in the middle of the negotiation and release story, they mentioned this. And I'm frustrated, and then I say, you know what? You're a moron for being frustrated. News is entertainment now. The sexy story was the basketball girl being released. I mean, BBC, which very straight, very bland, very dry, very, very newsy, unsexy, and you know what? For the majority of this country, unlistenable. Unwatchable, unlistenable, because it's straight news. I think it's the only goddamn thing I'm going to listen to from. That's it.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, to me, sometimes the anchor's personality pulls. There's only so much of certain people that I can take. Like, when you're like, I can only take so much of Rachel Maddow. I can only take so much of Hannity. I can only take so much of Laura Ingalls, Tucker Carlson. You know,
because these are all personalities.
Yeah, and there's only so much I can take of it, and but my whole thing was on this on the Grimes things was, so they keep going with the narrative that this man is a Marine, this man is a Marine, this man is a Marine. Well, when I was in the service, I wasn't a Marine, but I mean, I'm going to stay in the gulag and let the lady go home. You know? I mean, I'm going to let the lady go home. And of course, you know, God forbid if you're 6'9" and you can dunk a basketball, because that absolutely takes away from, and then you're married to a woman. All these things, you know. But the reason how is that news? Because she does fit those categories. She's a black athlete. She's gay. But But at the same time that she's being released, legislation is signing same-sex marriage. Like,
Good luck finding it.
yeah, it's like a blip. And I did the same thing you did. I said, so did this happen today? Or is this old news? Like,
I thought it was an op-ed. I was scrolling.
I did the same thing.
And it was like, I was like, what? Out of control. I thought I see just the headline about same-sex marriage waiting to be signed. And I thought it was an op-ed piece, because it was buried. It was buried in the feed. And I was on, I can't say, I don't know if I was on CNN for sure, but or it might have been Washington Post. I think it popped up, and I was looking for the more info on the Marine, and no, it wasn't. It was the immigration story.
Oh, the immigration thing is completely out of control. I mean, I just don't see how, and I actually did the math on it. Mm-hmm. So if you let's just round it out and say they brought in 100,000 IRS agents. I think that's what they hired so they could, get more of the taxes. But if we're letting in 2.5 million people across the border, like, wouldn't that 100,000 people do more good as border patrol than it? I mean,
need a plan.
You got to have a plan.
Need a plan.
This is, and they keep throwing stuff at Biden, and he keeps juggling it. But this is, I mean, this is the optic of it looking like they've shut down the rides at Disney for the day, and they didn't tell the people in line.
Oh, the visual, yes.
Oh, the visual, and they did this same thing. Remember where they had like 20,000 people underneath an underpass, and they kept showing this. They kept showing the optic, and then all of a sudden, like, three news cycles went by, and they showed earth movers and bulldozers cleaning up the garbage where those people were, and this viaduct area was completely cleared. They made no reference to where the people were moved to, what happened, and you just go like, God, that had a short 3-day. Like some shit just has, you think like, okay, well, I'll watch that tomorrow and I'll follow up on that story, and then it just vanishes.
Well, because it's ratings driven.
Yeah, like
right.
that didn't draw, so we got to get that off there.
Exactly.
Nobody wants to watch the immigrants. I was talking to you the other day. We equated it to the Sarah McLachlan Eyes of an Angel with the dogs missing the eyes and all that. Like nobody wants to watch that. You just feel like shit. You want to go out and rescue 75 animals.
It's the same thing. They're showing family. They always show the kids.
They always show, and it's just like, and and the thing is like, they're human beings. I get that. But there's people on the other side of that fence in El Paso that aren't much of a better predicament, except they are legally there. And it's just like, maybe I'm just old school, blue collar, take care of your people, but like, we got to take care of our people.
Well, it's I heard this, I wish I could credit who said it, but it was kind of just in the middle of a discussion, and somebody on the show, it was on I'm trying to remember it was one of the small talking head shows, and they said the United States obviously is the only country that does not think of itself collectively. It thinks of the individual first, and they just kind of said that and moved on, like to the point they were trying to make. But that was a significant point to me, and I hadn't thought about in those terms. And We are not conditioned here to think globally or to
No.
think communally. We think me first. We vote me first. Who's gonna serve my bank account first? Who's gonna serve me first? And enough of that makes this conflagration that we consistently have. But my point about the immigration was I was looking for that and stumbled on the same-sex marriage bill waiting to be signed. And it was shocking to me of how you got to put it in an order, right? Your feed is in an order. If you're watching a broadcast, there's a programmed order. But I had to go down half the page. I don't know where it was. I didn't watch news, but I don't know where it was if it was on the top of any of the news broadcasts. But clearly it wasn't as sexy as everything else that was going on that day because our news is ratings driven. We're just going to have to accept that.
Well, I mean, it's so you take $50 billion out of the defense budget, all right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of ballpark what takes care of the homelessness. Like that's what they say if you threw $50 billion onto it. But then again, you don't get to get 50 of those brand new stealth bombers. And everybody knows that there's just not enough nuclear warheads stockpiled in this world as it is to destroy it 1 billion times over. So, I think what you need to do is just make more ammo. You can never have enough ammo.
When you sit in Congress, it's like one of those video games where you have to, like when you're creating a character and you have to put like attribution points, like you put 10 points to the fighting skill and 6 points for defense and 8 points for magic or whatever. That's all a nation's budget is. Your budget is your budget, right? You've got the total kitty, and you've got to drop money in different areas. And the prioritization is largely dependent. There's, of course, party stuff, which usually follows suit, give or take a few percentage points in either direction. But like emphasis on defense or emphasis on social spending and programs and stuff. So it's always the same contest every time in Congress when there's a budget. But it is funny how we all looked at the same footage, the 10,000, I'll say 10,000, whatever it was, right? The border shot that we're talking about, right? And we're not talking, it doesn't have to be a wall, but we're still not talking about a system. We're still not talking about, the path to citizenship thing is fine, and it largely deals with people who are here. But you need immigration policy.
Well, it's the person from Pakistan and the person from India and the person from the Ukraine who are going through proper channels. Like, I saw a thing the other day on one of the channels, and they were talking about San Salvador. Isn't San Salvador the country that went completely digital? They went Bitcoin.
Oh, we were talking about that. Where was that?
Wasn't it? Isn't it San Salvador? Steve, is it San Salvador?
El Salvador, right?
Is it El? It's El Salvador.
Hold on one second.
Pull that up. Because they were talking to the president of the country, and he was saying,
El Salvador goes entirely Bitcoin,
and they're like, their country is absolutely booming right now. Everything is just booming in El Salvador. And I'm thinking like, all right, well, maybe smarten up some of these people so they don't walk the extra couple thousand miles, and maybe a couple of them stop by San Salvador, hang out there a while, get you something to eat, stay at the Red Roof. I don't know. That's what people say, oh, did you ever think about running for office? Where would you start? Just on that border, where do you start?
Well, first of all, if you have a border, it does have to be patrolled.
Absolutely.
Right? And you can build a path to citizenship for people, but there has to be procedure, and it has to follow a proper protocol. there's always been asylum exclusions, I guess you could call it, in countries that we identify as a fucking shit show, where most people's options would be, be killed in the streets, and have your businesses robbed from you, or get to somewhere where you can live. And most of the civilized nations in the world have paths to citizenship for asylum cases. So, but you've got to identify